Hi, I'm Pastor Andrew McGregor from Grande, Prairie Alliance Church. Welcome to our YouTube channel today. As you engage with this sermon, I pray that the God who loves you would meet with you in meaningful and significant ways. I want to encourage you to lean in to the extent possible, with a heart posture that's open to receiving from God whatever it is that He wants to say to you or do in your life today. As a church, we care about you. We want to continue to see you flourish and thrive. And so we'd love to receive you in person at the church campus whenever you'd like to come, but also feel free to engage with us here on our YouTube channel or on our website at gpalliance.ca.
Well, good morning. Happy Father's Day to you. A day like today is really interesting because there's so many complex and varying emotions around a day like today. Again, when we look at a day like today, you might just be full of and overwhelmed with joy and gratitude for the amazing father that you had. You might be full of thanksgiving for the fact that you get to be a father, and it's a really, really good gift. For others of us, when we come to a day like today, there's just a whole lot of guilt and maybe some feelings of shame because we look and we just wish that we would have been a better father, or maybe we wish that we would have been a better child in relationship with our father. For some of us, today feels profoundly painful. Again, if you've lost your father or if you've lost a child, today brings up all kinds of different emotions. If you've been unable to conceive or have a child for whatever reason, today feels like it exemplifies all of the ways that you feel empty in that. And if you have a fractured or broken relationship with your father or with your child, today can also bring an element of pain and complexity to it. As we come to a day like today, there's just so much going on in all of our hearts and all of our minds, and sometimes a mixture of all of these feelings all at the same time. And then we toss into the middle of all of that as well the fact that the Bible tells us that God is our Father, but what does that really mean? How does God relate to us as a father? How do we understand that kind of interaction when our own interactions with our fathers or with our children are always marred and incomplete on some particular level? Well, Jesus gives a number of stories that give us a clear explanation of what the heart of God our Father is like. And today we want to take a few minutes to look at one part of one of those stories just to gain a sense of the fatherly heart of God. And so to put this in context, Jesus has been out, he's been preaching, he's been ministering, he's been healing people, he's been doing all kinds of amazing stuff, and so many people are being drawn into a relationship with God. And one of the interesting things is it's not always who you think. So many of the last people that anyone ever imagined would find a relationship with God are just being drawn to Jesus. The people who are outside the boundaries of what the norm of society is, those who've led a really sinful life, the people who everyone had just written off as not really being able to do much, all of these people are being drawn to Jesus. And he's welcoming them in. And he's celebrating the wonder of what God is doing in and through their lives. And it's amazing, it's beautiful and delightful. But the religious leaders of that day are furious. They're so frustrated. They keep coming to Jesus and his disciples and saying, why would you receive these people? Why would you eat with them? Why would you celebrate with them? How can you just welcome them right in? This isn't right. And in response to this, Jesus gives these explanations about what the heart of God the Father is like. And today we're going to look at this one part of one story from Luke chapter 15. We read, Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them." Let's just pause there just for a second. Again, in this culture, this would have been absolutely unheard of. No child would ever go to their parent and say, "I want you to give me my part of the inheritance before you die." In that context, this would have been like the son going to his dad and saying, "Dad, I just really wish you were dead. I would love to move on with my life. Would you just give me what's coming to me now?" And again, in this culture where they really honored their elders, it would have put this son at significant risk for cultural damage. He might have been shunned or cast out of society. In this culture, he really could have been physically harmed or maybe even killed for being this kind of disrespectful to his parent. But instead of the father saying, "I'm going to take whatever's mine, son, you can't treat me like this," the father says, "Okay, I'm willing to go along with this. If this is really what you want, I'll give you your part of the estate." So he divided it between them. But the son is not willing to just stop here with this kind of damage to the family. He goes about the process of liquidating all of the assets that he has just been given while his father is still alive. And again, this would have been overwhelmingly scandalous. Again, this isn't easy like, say, going to the bank and drawing money out of an investment account or an RRSP. This would have meant selling significant pieces of land. maybe land that this family had worked for generations to accumulate together. This would have meant going out and selling all kinds of livestock and physical things, and this would have all been remarkably public. The whole community around them would have been watching this family disintegrating before their eyes, and they would have been saying, "What on earth is going on with this family?" It seemed like everything was going so well. It would have brought tremendous shame on the father, as the whole community looked at them and said, "How could you possibly have a son who would live like this and be like this, and how could you let him get away with it?" It would have caused significant tension. And Jesus is explaining to us this is what the heart of God the Father is like. When we choose to go our own way, when we choose to do things that are damaging or destructive to God or to ourselves or to relationship with others, He will let us get away with it. Because the interesting fact is that any real and genuine love must always be open to the person choosing not to love us back. God could have simply forced us to love Him, but always chose to give us the capacity to choose to love Him or not. And if we choose to live life in our own way, He will allow us to do it. He doesn't force or cajole or push or manipulate or force us into these things. And so this son gathers together his stuff and begins to implement this plan that is doomed to fail, as all of our plans apart from God are. And we read, "Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to feed his pigs in the field. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything." So when we have this fascinating scene, the son has taken all this massive wealth that was meant to support him and his descendants for generations. He liquidates it all and then heads off as far as he possibly can into a foreign country to get away from his family, his culture, everything that might possibly restrain him, and he blows all of this money in wild living. He gives into a relentless pursuit to try and find the good life, the life that will satisfy him, that will give him everything he's ever hoped for and dreamed of through his life. And again, maybe some of us can identify with this. Maybe over the course of your life, you have invested so much of your time and your money and your resources, your relationships, in a desperate pursuit of finding something that will satisfy your soul. In this desperate longing to find the good life as you understand it. And you've poured so much of yourself into it. And if you're really honest, there's still some part of you that feels unsatisfied. There's some part that still just feels a bit empty. And so this son spends absolutely everything he has in a relentless pursuit of this satisfaction that eludes him all the way through. And then when all the money is gone, there is a severe famine in the land. And so this place that this guy has run to find pleasure and delight and all the things that his heart has longed for just begins to disintegrate all around him. And the people around him begin to have less and less and less. And so he finds the only job that he possibly can, feeding pigs out in a field. And for someone of his culture, this would have seemed profoundly degrading. And you can imagine the thoughts that must have gone through his mind. He's gone from the social standing of being the son of a wealthy landowner, respected and a significant person in his community. And then he's isolated from his family and from all of his relationships. He spends everything he has and is left destitute with nothing. He finds himself bankrupt morally and relationally and financially and in every possible way. He has nothing and he has no one. And he's left out there in the fields, ashamed, not even able to find enough to eat. Have you ever felt even a little bit like that? Again, for some of us, maybe you ran out in a moment of determination. You burnt a whole lot of bridges in your relationships. Maybe you tried to accumulate so many things and you spent your life in a relentless pursuit of what you thought would make you whole. You had a beautiful plan for your life, but it just didn't pan out. And now you feel lonely and somewhat ashamed of some of the choices and decisions that you've made, things that leave you now feeling somewhat empty and unsure. And in the midst of this space, some part of your heart longs to go back. Some part of you longs just to find a way to be whole all over again. And thankfully, our story does not end there. We read, when he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father." Again, this is a really interesting moment. Here this guy is, he's found himself in this huge downward spiral. He recognizes he has nothing and he will likely die. If he tries to stay in this space, he will simply starve to death. And his mind races back to when he was at home, and he thinks about even the servants in his father's household had so much more than this. He says, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to trust that there's still some compassion left in the heart of my father, and I'm going to go home. He realizes that things will never be the same ever again. But he chooses to take that step and to begin to move forward and say, I'm going to go back and offer myself as a servant to my father because that would be way better than living where I am now. And he does this critical thing. After he's done all this thinking about it, it says, he got up and went on his way. And I think that's always the pivotal moment, right? That moment when we choose to actually do something that we know we are supposed to do. That moment of repentance where we turn away from where we are going and go in a different direction, back towards what is right. And I think for so many of us, we have lived so many years playing through in our minds, here's the things that I know I should do. This is the pathway that I know I should follow. But we wrestle inside and we delay and we make all kinds of excuses and we keep putting off all the things that we know that we should do and just maybe we never get there. We have to eventually come to that point where we say, I am going to do it. And make that moment of turnaround action where we move back to the heart of God and the fullness of what He intends for us. And can you imagine all the scenarios that must have run through this guy's mind? As he's on this journey back home, the 1,000 scenarios that he thought of. I wonder if he thought, what if I get home and my father won't even see me? What if I get home and nobody will help me? What if I get home and they just hang over my head all the disastrous things that I've done? What if I just end up feeling so much more ashamed than I do even right now? What if it doesn't go well? Have you ever had any thoughts like that? And I think for so many of us, as we begin to move back towards things that we know are right, we inevitably have all of these thoughts. What if I won't be received well? What if this goes really badly? What if the people around me cast me out? Or what if nobody cares about me? What if I end up feeling more ashamed and more degraded and more demoralized through the experience? What if this just goes horribly, horribly wrong? And these thoughts play through our mind, and maybe we feel tempted to turn back. But the son just kept going. He kept moving towards his father, and Jesus tells us what the heart of God the Father is like as we journey towards him. But while the son was a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said, Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fatted calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead, and he's alive again. He was lost and is found. And so they began to celebrate. Instead of rejecting this son, we see that the father has been watching out for him. I mean, the fact that the father sees him even from a long distance would indicate to us that probably every single day, at some point in the day, the father would go to where he could see the road that his son left on, and he would gaze down it, watching for his son's return. The father's not holding himself back, saying, when you get your act together, finally I'll receive you. He is delighted to see this son. And do you know that that's the way that God interacts with you? Every single day of your life, God is watchful and mindful of your direction. Every single day, He is looking for you to see the moments when you will choose to turn towards Him. He is passionate for your return. And as this father sees his son coming again, he doesn't sit back in the house and wait for him to get to the porch. This father takes off running to get to his son as fast as he possibly can. And again, in this culture, that would have been absolutely unheard of. A man of his age and social standing would never run. He would take a very slow and a dignified walk everywhere that he went. But the father doesn't care about social convention. He doesn't care what other people will think of him. He takes off running to find this son. As he sees him, he wraps his arms around him and he kisses him. He has to get close to him. He's missed him so desperately. The father's love for the son is just so overwhelming that he doesn't care about his reputation in that moment. But the father also runs to his son because he doesn't want harm to come to him. The father knows that if he waits for the son to get to him, it is entirely possible that someone else in their community will get to the son first. And they will say things like, "How dare you ever come back? Do you realize the shame that you brought to your father? Do you see all the evil things you've done? How could you possibly come here?" He realizes that the people in the community may also harm his son for the damage and the shame that he's done, and the father is not willing to allow that to happen. And so he has to get to his son first. He takes off running and racing, and as he's there grasping onto his son begins this rehearsed speech and says, "Father, I have sinned against heaven, and I've sinned against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son." But before he can go any further, before he can express the idea that maybe he could just live as a servant in the household, the father cuts him off and interrupts. The father is unwilling that his son would possibly see himself as anything less than a son of his household. And so he breaks in and he says, "Quick, get the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fatted calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and now he's found." You see, the father is unwilling to allow his son to stay in this space of shame and humiliation a second longer than he needs to. He says, "Quick, get the best robe and put it on him." This would have been a robe that the father would have worn on significant occasions. And as the son gets clothed with this robe all over again, he is saying to the son and to the community around him, "This is my child. He has all the dignity and all the rights of being a child of my household." He says, "Quick, get a ring and put it on him. Give him back a sign of significance and a sign of authority." He's come barefoot and impoverished, and so the father says, "Get sandals and put them on his feet. I don't want anyone to see him like this. I don't want him to feel ashamed a second longer than he needs to." The father is unwilling to allow his son to stand there in the shame and the degradation of his choices for a second longer than he needs to. And he also says, "And let's have a huge party and celebrate." Because he wants his son to be welcomed back into the community. The father is unwilling that his son would have to live his life hidden away inside the house as some sort of disgrace that people know is there but don't really talk about. And he knows if he throws a huge party and shows the community right away that he has welcomed his son back, he knows the community also will probably be forced to receive this son as well. And he wants to welcome him and restore him fully in relationship with himself as the father, but also in relationship with the town and the community that they live in. And so he makes this outward expression right away. "This is my son. He belongs to me. I am celebrating him today." And to know that this is how God the Father sees each and every single one of us. Again, he's mindful of every movement of your life across every moment and every day. And as soon as he sees your heart and your mind move and turn towards him, he will race towards you. He's willing to pay the pain and the cost and the indignity of doing whatever it takes to bring you back to himself. He's willing to take on the shame of being seen to be profoundly connected to you because he is passionate about you and wants to protect you from any potential damage that anyone else might say or do. The Father will give you time to express your apology to him because this is critical. Our ability to simply own our mistakes and our illnesses and not our illnesses, but our evils and all the damaging things that we have done is crucial. Again, if you've ever been in a relationship with someone who's really, really hurt you, you know that you can't really move back in relationship with them until you've heard them say, "I'm sorry. I recognize this was profoundly evil. I know how much this damaged and hurt you. Could you possibly forgive me?" Without that admission of guilt, without that admission of responsibility, it is impossible to rebuild trust and relationship. And so the Father will always give us the time that we need to work through those things. But He won't let us live as anything less than His children, and He doesn't want us to live perpetually all of our life in shame and places where we feel disgraced. He wants to clothe us all over again with the dignity of His presence. He wants to give us back the authority that has been lost, filling us with His Spirit to empower us and strengthen us to live well. He wants to give us the sandals that we need to cover up the ways that we have impoverished our lives. He is unwilling for us to live perpetually in the shame and disgrace of the degrading reality of our choices. And He also wants to bring us back into community. He gives us this really good gift of the church so that we can be known and seen and experience life together, that we don't need to live hidden in shame or unsure of how we possibly could connect with others around us. And He gives us the ability to have our lives back. Again, where we have damaged and hurt and wounded and sinned against the people around us, He would invite and challenge us to make that right to the fullest extent that we possibly can. He would encourage us to work through the journey of healing and transformation. But we don't do this as some servant who's cast out until we have it all together. We do this as children of God, knowing His blessing, His strength, His presence with us all of the way through the journey. He longs to clothe us with the dignity and the righteousness that we were always intended for. And God will do this for each and every one of us. And so today, where are you? Today, where are you in the flow of this journey? Again, for some of us today, we could recognize when we hear this story, all that we can think of are the countless ways that God has saved us and redeemed us and restored us and worked within our lives. All that we can see is the wonder of the fact that He's done this over and over and over again through our history. And as we read this story, we are overwhelmingly grateful. And if that's you today, all that you need to do is just be thankful to God. Just thank Him that He has cared for you. Thank Him that He's redeemed you, that He's met you in so many different circumstances where you were straying from so many things. Again, for others of us today, you have a relationship with God. You know that you know Jesus, but you also know there are parts of your life that are significantly out of alignment with what He wants for you. You recognize that there are spaces where you are seeking satisfaction and fulfillment in things that leave you feeling empty or ashamed or degraded, things that are damaging you or the people around you. Again, if that's you today, this is an invitation to come home. This is an invitation to move past all of your excuses and all the reasons why you think that it would never work and all of your fears of being rejected. And to simply trust the fact that God loves you like this, that He desires to make you whole like this, and to begin that journey to move back into fullness with Him. You will never regret that decision. And for others of us today, you do not yet know the love of God in Jesus. For some of us today, you've spent your whole life running. You've spent your whole life seeking satisfaction and fulfillment and delight in things that have left you feeling empty and ashamed. And if this is you today, this is an invitation to come home, maybe for the very first time. To recognize that every single moment of your life, God, your perfect Father, has been watching over you, just waiting for your heart or your mind to begin to turn towards Him so that He can rush out and embrace you, so that He can draw you back into the sense of community, into the sense of the fullness of who He has intended you to be. He longs to take all of those parts of your life and your soul that you feel so ashamed of and clothe you with dignity and strength and authority. He longs to restore you in a right relationship with Him and with people around you. You know, the interesting thing in this story is when we read it, the son, when he decided to run his own way, took a really long journey to a far-off country. But when he decided to come home, it was just a very few steps. We have no record of a long journey. He certainly didn't have the money or the food or the capacity to get there. And Jesus is explaining to us, this is what a relationship with God is like. No matter how far you have run, no matter what you have done, no matter how far you have strayed from God, all that it takes is just a very few steps to return back to Him. All that it takes is the posture of our heart to move towards God, to do what the Son did and just confess the evils and the wrongs that we've done, to ask for God's forgiveness, and instantly He receives us home. And He guides us through the journey to make right all of the rest of it. And so today, if you're here and you've never known or experienced the love of a relationship with God through Christ, and today you want to do that, just simply pray something like this with me silently. Lord, I recognize that I've sinned against you. Would you forgive me? I turn to you and away from all of the evil. Would you set me free and empower me to live life as your child now and always? Amen.